Subscribe before the truth disappears. The parking lot lights were still buzzing when the sun went down, washing the asphalt in a flat, supermarket glow that made everything look ordinary again. The cones were gone. The tape was down, but the chalky silence of a place that had held too much sorrow lingered like the aftertaste of metal. Detective Mara Quinn stood beside a wind-stippled cart corral and took in the angles. The store's glass doors cycling open and closed on nobody, a thrift shop next door with its grate half-lowered, the scuffed curb where a brownish stain had already been power-washed into a pale comet. She had arrived too late for the frantic part. Ambulances, officers sprinting, witnesses clutching their own elbows as if bones might fall out, but not too late to feel the echo. She could always feel the echo. "Detective," said a young patrolman with red, weather-cracked knuckles. "Security manager's got the footage set up inside, and there's something else." She followed him past a crowded service counter where returns and coupons had ruled the day until the day changed. The security office was smaller than the planogram on the wall made the store look, a humming cave of old monitors and a newer flat screen balanced on a metal shelf. A store manager in a collared shirt, whose face wouldn't quite untense, stabbed a remote and split the video into 4 squares. "We synced the cameras like you asked. Now watch the left upper. Outside doors." On the screen, the doors parted with their obstinate, automatic calm. People crossed in and out, the tide of a weekday. Then the frame hitched. In the next second, everything happened too fast. Movement that flared and vanished. The remote clicked. They rolled it back, slowed it to a lurching crawl. A figure in a dark jacket and white sneakers drifted at the edge of the doors, head tilted as if listening to air. They slipped inside the thrift store. They emerged again with hands inside a coat, gaze pinned to the rows of parked cars like a magnet seeking north. The camera stuttered once more. The manager swallowed. That's what we have." Mara leaned close. The timestamp, small and stubborn, stamped the corner with minute and second. Her pen tapped twice against the metal shelf. "Why the drop?" she asked. "Why does it skip right there?" "Glitch," the manager said quickly. We had a brownout last month. IT said it still plays fine," though his eyes had drifted upward to the ceiling tiles, as if answers might be stored there. Mara backed the footage to the thrift store's interior camera. The next-door manager had unlocked a second office for them, a room that smelled like burlap and old paperbacks. Here, the angle was too high and too wide. Smart thrift shops like to show everything. A person walked down an aisle of cooking wares and paused at a pegboard of cutlery, their body rotating slowly, almost reverently. One hand rose and fell. Rose and fell. "Pause it," Mara said softly. "Right there." A blur of plastic. The pegboard's front row shook. Then, something odd. The person didn't take the easiest knife from the front. They reached past, fingers seeking one labeled with a little orange tag. The camera wasn't crisp enough to tell why. "Zoom," Mara said. "We don't have," the thrift clerk began, then tried anyway. Pixelated blocks swam across the screen. The orange tag became a flicker, a smudge that might have been price, might have been category. Mara memorized the shelf label anyway. Kitchen, misc. Her pen scratched. Tag, color. "Do your tags track lots? Donations by day?" The clerk nodded, uneasy. "We number each batch. There's a sheet." "Get it," Mara said. "And I need your staff list. Anyone on the register who saw her, saw them." She did not say the word suspect. Not here, not in a thrift office that had given the world useful second chances for years. Back in the store's break room, the store security manager rubbed his temple, watching her watch the footage again. "You'll get more from the police dash cams," he offered, like a lifeline. "We will. But this is where the story decides to make sense or not." The story. That was how she kept the river of facts inside its banks. There was what happened, and then there was the story people told about what happened. In good cases, clean cases, they lay almost on top of each other, maybe off by a few inches. In bad ones, the gap stretched until you could fall into it and be swallowed whole. She stepped out into evening air that had cooled into a thin November edge. Across the lot, a mother stood between two older women, all three in coats zipped against a chill that had nothing to do with weather. Reporters had come and gone. Most of the city had eaten dinner and put small children to bed. Mara took in a breath that lodged halfway down and let it out slowly. She was not new to grief. She was in this moment a custodian of it. A corporal hurried up with a paper bag, the kind that would have carried groceries if the day had cooperated. "From the thrift shop," he said. "Inventory sheet you asked for. They also gave us the drawer tape." Mara scanned the columned page. Donations logged by date and bin. The kitchen lot had been processed 2 days earlier. Knives, ladles, a bundt pan, a box of mixed blades, written hurriedly as if the employee had wanted to finish before break. She traced a line with her thumb to the batch initials, ES. "Who's ES?" she asked. "Erin Staub, college kid, part-time. She's here." Erin's hands were raw at the knuckles from sorting books. She smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and dust. "We tag things last in, first out mostly. Except the knives, we reserve the safer ones to the front in case kids come in with their parents. The ones with chips or weird edges go farther back." "What does orange mean?" "Orange means priced," Erin said. "Green means needs cleaning. Blue means we don't sell it, just scrap it. Orange means we decided it was okay." Mara nodded. "And this batch, any memory of it?" Erin's eyes skittered to the side and returned. "It had some older knives, like someone's garage clean-out. One of the boxes had a hardware store sticker." "Local?" "I think so," she said. I'm sorry, "You're doing fine," Mara said, and meant it. "Do you remember this person?" She slid over a printed still of the figure's profile from the thrift camera. Erin let her breathing even out and studied it with a care that made her like her. The young woman said, "I remember because she looked like she was listening for something that wasn't happening. She walked like she'd already decided to leave." "How did she pay?" Mara asked. "Cash, under $5. Under $5. A price you can pull from the bottom of your pocket along with dust and lint and a paperclip. The kind of price that wouldn't be remembered by anyone but the person who chose it." By the time Mara made it home, her apartment felt like it had borrowed silence from the store. She put her coat on the chair back, then changed her mind and hung it up properly. Granularity mattered. On her kitchen table, she laid out the artifacts of the day. The inventory sheet, the thrift drawer tape, the request for security metadata from the grocer's IT contractor, her own notes, times and angles, and the distances between where a person stood and where they appeared the next frame. There was one small thing she realized as the apartment settled around her. The thrift camera timestamp showed the figure reaching for the pegboard at 3:17 p.m., slipping the knife-sized packet into a pocket and drifting toward the door at 3:18 p.m. The grocer's exterior camera lagged by 1 full minute, registered the person stepping out at 3:19, then stuttering to 3:21, as if time had shrugged. All cameras have quirks, all systems have drift, but most big-box stores calibrate nightly. Their NVRs handshake at midnight with the time servers like old friends remembering a song. The minute was nothing, unless it wasn't. Mara opened her laptop and wrote herself a question in the subject line, the way she did when she needed sleep but couldn't trust herself to keep the thread by morning. Why does the knife happen twice? She knew it wasn't twice. She knew it was one unbroken motion, but she also knew that when a story doesn't fit, it's safer to ask it into the light. Why does the knife happen twice? That was better than staring through the dark and feeling it breathe back. Her phone buzzed on the counter, a number she didn't recognize, local. "Detective Quinn?" a voice asked, thin through static. "This is Brent McMurdy from Store Systems. I got your request. We pulled the logs. That skip isn't a brownout." "What is it?" Mara asked, steadying her voice so it wouldn't run too fast and spill. "It's a manual reset," he said. "Someone logged into the recorder at 3:20 p.m. and forced a quick sync. They do it when they're testing playback or when they want to wipe a hiccup they just saw. Who has that login? Mara asked. Only 2 store managers and 1 regional asset protection guy, Brent said. He read off the username, a neat corporate blend of letters and numbers that meant nothing until it did.
Mara ended the call and stared at the notes again. Rain ticked softly against her window, a late storm dragging its edge across the city. In the parking lot footage, the world had leapt forward as if a hand had reached into the movie and yanked the reel. And now the hand had a username. She pushed back her chair and paced the worn trail between table and sink where her mind liked to walk. The prosecutor would want the timeline tight. The defense would tease at any loose stitch, argue the skip was nothing, argue it did not change what a jury had already heard, the wound already carved through the city's center. But a skip like that, in a case like this, could mean something else entirely. Not crucial to guilt, no one in good faith would rewrite the verdict, but crucial to context. It could mean the story people told about what happened was being rearranged, not to free anyone, but to soften the ruin, to push a little of the weight onto the randomness of the world. Her phone buzzed again, another unknown number, this one a text. She didn't answer numbers at night. She answered this one at night. The message contained a single line and a photo. The line read, "Check the mirror in Cam 4. The photo was a screenshot of the grocer's exterior camera, Cam 4, taken from the left-hand angle. In the convex security mirror mounted above the automatic doors, just a safety mirror to keep carts from clipping ankles, she could see the wash of parking lot, the bright strip of the crosswalk, and the person in the dark jacket moving quick and sharper than the main camera showed. The mirror, curved and merciless, held reflections the primary lens had missed when it fell asleep and woke again. She pinched and zoomed. The mirror had caught a sliver of another figure at the edge of the frame, someone with a lanyard and a radio, half turned toward the doors, hand on the NVR closet key. She knew, in the way she recognized the start of a confession by the way a room cooled, that she was somewhere new. The hand that had yanked the reel had been standing in plain view all along, reflected above the doors where nobody looks. Mara's heart thudded once like a gavel. The story had tilted 5 degrees. She pressed call on the last number, but whoever had sent it didn't pick up. It rang out into the same air that filled the mirror. She looked again at the picture and at the tiny employee badge blurred by distance. It was nothing. It was everything. It was the kind of small, stubborn detail that refuses to sit quietly in the file, that clicks 2 pieces of a shattered day into a new, uglier shape. When she finally stepped to her window, the city's late-night lights made lanes of gold across the wet streets. Somewhere, a refrigerator kicked on. Somewhere, the forklifts at a distribution center beeped in reverse. And in the half-blown reflection of the glass, she saw herself, the detective who arrived after the sirens and stayed for the long work, raise her phone and photograph her own face beside the mirror that had been telling the truth all along. In the morning, she would bring the image to the prosecutor. In the morning, she would request the lanyard list and the door access pings and every little login a manager have ever used on a day when grief rewrote a family and a city and a life. But tonight, as the building settled and the wind moved a tree branch against the brick, she set the phone down and whispered the first honest shape of the question to the empty room. If the camera didn't blink, who did? And then, because every story must turn on something, she opened the photo again and zoomed one last time on the reflection above the doors, just far enough to see that the tiny badge had a name, and that the name was not one she expected to find anywhere near the truth.
Detective Mara Quinn sat at her desk, the photo of the mirror reflection open on her monitor, its pixels blowing up into something uncomfortably human. A supermarket security mirror, cheap convex glass, and yet it had caught what the high-end cameras missed. A glimpse of the man she'd interviewed not 24 hours earlier, manager of Giant Eagle, Mark Lyle. The lanyard, the radio, the posture. He had been helpful, cooperative, too much so. Now, the timestamp told a different story. The next morning came cold and windless. North Olmsted streets were filmed in sleet. The parking lot outside the precinct shimmered with thin ice that cracked under tires. Inside, the air smelled of coffee, stress, and copier toner. Sergeant Neil Adler leaned against the evidence board, flipping through the printed stills. "So you're saying he tampered with the footage after the attack?" "I'm saying," Mara replied, "that the system didn't skip on its own. Someone forced a resync while the suspect was still in frame, and that someone was in uniform with a store keycard." "Could be coincidence," Adler said. "He might have noticed the system lagging and thought he was fixing it." Mara raised an eyebrow. "At 3:20 p.m., the exact minute the footage jumps past the attack?" Adler hesitated, exhaling through his teeth. "I'll pull his employee access logs. But even if he did, why? She was caught. There's no benefit to him now." "Maybe not to her," Mara said quietly, "but to someone else." Mark Lyle answered his front door in the same gray fleece he'd worn to the station. His suburban home was neat to the point of unease, blinds aligned, shoes paired precisely by the mat, a faint scent of cleaning solution and lemon. He smiled when he saw Mara. "Detective, you people don't sleep, do you?" "Not much," she said. "Mind if I come in?" He gestured her toward the living room, every movement polite and stiff, the kind that hides something under habit. "I wanted to talk about your store's security feed," she said, sitting opposite him. "There's a time discrepancy, 2 minutes missing from camera 4. His brow creased. "We've had issues with that one before, power surges. I told your tech team." "Yes, I saw that note," she said evenly. "But the system log shows a manual reboot, your username." He blinked. For the first time, his expression fractured. "Just a second." The kind of pause that says, "I didn't expect you to have that." "I was, testing playback. Training. Corporate wants us to verify footage every shift now. It was bad timing, that's all." Mara leaned back, eyes steady. "You did it while the suspect was on screen." Mark's jaw tightened. "I didn't know that then." "No," she said, "but you knew after." His hands gripped his knees. "Look, I lost a daughter, Detective, 2 years ago. I saw that woman with the knife, and I froze. If I hesitated when the footage jumped, it wasn't to protect her. It was because for 5 seconds, I couldn't tell if I was seeing it again." The honesty in his voice cracked something soft inside her. She studied his eyes, searching for deceit and finding exhaustion instead. Maybe trauma. Maybe both. "Can I see the footage again?" he asked. "I'm afraid not," she said. "It's evidence." He nodded, jaw working. "Then find whoever's been sending me those pictures." "What pictures?" He stood, walked to a small desk near the window, and opened an envelope. Inside were glossy photos printed on cheap paper, zoomed stills from the same parking lot camera. In every one, Mark was visible near the entrance, watching the suspect, watching her long before the attack began. "I found these under my door last night. No return address." Mara stared at them. The angle wasn't from the supermarket's cameras. These were taken from across the street, from the thrift store window. Back at the station, Mara spread the photos under the sterile fluorescence of the evidence table. The thrift store's window had the perfect line of sight to the grocery doors. Someone had been documenting the scene before it happened. Adler frowned at the prints. "That's premeditated surveillance, which means she wasn't alone." "She was mentally unstable," Mara said. "Random victim. That's what the court said." "Maybe she was," Adler replied. "But maybe someone pointed her there." The theory tasted wrong, but also too possible. Random violence was chaos, easy to close the file on. But this meant intent. She pulled up the thrift shop's donation log again. Batch ES. Aaron Staub, the student. The orange-tagged knife. A coincidence then. Maybe not now. "Get me her address," Mara said. Aaron's small off-campus apartment smelled of incense and wet paint. Canvases leaned against the wall, mostly abstract, some oddly precise. One, half-finished, caught Mara's attention, a wide-angle recreation of the Giant Eagle parking lot. Every line correct, every lamppost exact. Except, in the painting, the figure with the knife wasn't the attacker. It was faceless. Behind her, someone else stood just inside the glass doors, holding a phone up. "Who told you to paint this?" Mara asked softly. "No one. I saw it online. Everyone saw it. I wanted to process it." Mara stepped closer. "You weren't supposed to see that angle. That view doesn't exist in any public footage." Aaron's mouth opened, then shut. "He said it was for a project," she whispered. "Who did?" "The regional guy. He came by the store after the arrest, said he was making a training video about public safety. He gave me a USB of the raw footage, said it was to use as reference for my art exhibition. I didn't." Mara's stomach turned. "Do you still have the USB?" She nodded and handed over a small black stick with the store's logo stickered on it. Back at the precinct, IT loaded it into a clean system. 4 files appeared, security footage backups, but a 5th file sat beneath them, unlabeled. It wasn't a video. It was an image, a freeze frame from the thrift store mirror, zoomed and enhanced. Below the mirror image was a single line of text typed in all caps. "You missed what she was looking at." Mara returned to the Giant Eagle after dark. The parking lot was empty except for delivery trucks. She stood under the security mirror and followed the reflection line, where the attacker had been looking before everything went white. Not at her victim, not at Mark Lyle. At the thrift store window. Inside, the glass still bore faint residue from old sales stickers. Behind it, rows of secondhand goods gleamed faintly under motion-activated lights. And in the corner, behind the cash register, a metal donation bin with a half-peeled label, "Property of Regional Loss Prevention." Mara pulled out her flashlight and trained it on the floor beneath the bin. Scuff marks, as if the bin had been dragged recently. Her radio crackled. Adler's voice. "Quinn, you might want to get back here. We ran the badge from your reflection photo. That regional loss prevention guy, he's not with Giant Eagle anymore. Terminated 3 weeks before the attack." "Why?" she asked. "Misuse of surveillance equipment," Adler said. "He'd been recording customers without authorization. Disciplinary complaint pending." Mara's eyes flicked back to the mirror's convex gleam. The reflection held her silhouette, small and warped. She stepped closer until her own image blurred into abstraction. He hadn't just been recording customers. He'd been staging something, a scene maybe, or a pattern of behavior that only he could interpret. And somehow, one woman, lost in her own illness, had followed his invisible script straight into tragedy. Her flashlight caught something new. A tiny round lens tucked behind the thrift store ceiling vent. A live feed. The small red LED blinked once. She stepped backward, pulse hammering, and reached for her phone. But before she could dial, the LED winked out and the feed went dark. For a moment, there was only her reflection in the mirror, warped, silent, alone. Then the thrift store's power flickered, and across the street, the lights of the grocery store flared to life again, every automatic door opening in unison, like the building itself breathing. Mara whispered, "He's still watching." And somewhere, behind a screen, someone probably was. Rain fell in thin silver threads across the windshield as Detective Mara Quinn pulled into the side lot behind the Giant Eagle. The store's lights glowed through the storm, dimmed now by tinted glass in the hour. Inside, janitors were mopping tile and stacking crates. Everything appeared normal, too normal. Her wipers beat a slow rhythm. She killed the engine and listened to the static hum of the cruiser's radio. Somewhere, in the mix of frequencies, she thought she heard a voice, faint, distorted, a whisper cut by white noise. But when she turned up the volume, there was only silence. She told herself it was fatigue, 42 hours with barely 2 hours sleep, her mind looping over the same images, the thrift store mirror, the reflection of the man with the lanyard, the USB file labeled, "You missed what she was looking at." But she hadn't missed it anymore. She was here to find out what that woman, the killer, had seen. Inside the thrift store, the owner had left the lights off per request. Mara's flashlight carved long beams across the floor. Every creak of the wood echoed like a confession. She moved past the aisles of chipped glassware and worn coats until she reached the rear storage area, the one with the regional property bin she'd found earlier. Now the bin was gone. In its place sat a stack of cardboard boxes marked "Donations, Hold for Pickup," each sealed with heavy packing tape. She crouched beside them, touched the nearest one, light but not empty. Her glove brushed against a small sticker near the flap, a serial number. She jotted it down and peeled the edge of the tape. Inside were VHS tapes, dozens, some labeled in neat handwriting. North Olmsted 322, Parking South Lot 711, Staff Room 202. Others were blank. They weren't thrift donations, they were archives. A noise behind her made her freeze. A soft shuffle, a boot scraping concrete. Mara turned. "Detective Quinn," a voice said from the doorway, male, familiar. Mark Lyle. He stood under the hanging light bulb, face shadowed, one hand raised like surrender, but the other holding something small and metallic. "I know what you think you found, but it's not what it looks like." "Put it down, Mark." "It's just a drive," he said, holding it up, a small flash stick, identical to the one Aaron Staub had given her. "Who did?" Mark hesitated. "Our regional supervisor, the one who was fired. You were right, he'd been running his own surveillance network, not just here, across half the chain." "Why?" "To study behavior, or that's what he said at first. He said every shopper has patterns, motion signatures. He could predict theft, violence, maybe even intent. He called it pattern surveillance. Corporate shut it down, but he kept the servers, and he used them." Mara took a slow step forward. "Used them how?" Mark's hand shook. "He built a loop. You know how the cameras can mirror certain motions? He found a way to overlay two different feeds, days apart, and make them look like one event. That's what you saw, the skip. It wasn't just missing footage, it was rewritten footage." Mara felt her heartbeat rise. "He edited the live feed? He recorded over it. The attack wasn't spontaneous, it was triggered by him showing her something she thought she remembered. The woman, Bionca, she wasn't just walking through that parking lot, she was following a path she'd seen before, one he'd played for her." Mara stared. The theory was madness, and yet the footage timing, the skip, the perfect angle from the thrift window, it fit. "He engineered it." Mark nodded, eyes wet. "He sent me this drive 2 nights ago. Said if I didn't destroy it, I'd understand too much." "Where is he now?" Mark's voice cracked. "Gone, but he's watching. You've seen the lights, the doors opening at night? That's not power surge, that's him." Mara's radio chirped suddenly, a burst of feedback that made them both flinch. Adler's voice came through in fractured bursts. "Quinn, where are you? Security, feed, alive again, someone, inside, system." The signal cut out. Then, from the store speakers above them, faint at first, then rising, came a sound. Static, and then a voice. It wasn't clear words, more like syllables dragged through machinery, but one phrase surfaced through the distortion. "You missed what she was hearing." Mara's blood went cold. She turned to Mark. His face had gone gray. "He's routing the PA through the backup server," he whispered. Before he could finish, the thrift store lights cut out entirely. The emergency sign above the door flickered red. Mara grabbed her flashlight again, swept it across the aisles. It was the reflection in a metal shelf, glimmering. Not her, but another light somewhere outside the window. A van idled in the alley, engine running. They burst out the back door just as the van's taillights flared. Mara shouted, drew her weapon, but the vehicle peeled into the fog, tires screaming over wet pavement. She caught the first 3 digits of the plate before it vanished. K27, Ohio plate, commercial registry. Inside the store, the PA was still hissing. When Adler's team arrived minutes later, they swept the building. The system was active again, broadcasting through the thrift store's Wi-Fi router. Someone had hijacked its signal remotely.
The router logs showed a single connection, an IP traceback to a warehouse on the east side of Cleveland. Echo tone distribution, Adler read. That's defunct. No, Mara said quietly, it's not. The warehouse sat at the edge of a frozen canal, its brick walls streaked with rust. The same company name she'd seen before, Echo Tone Audio Restoration. The forensics team fanned out inside, old equipment, miles of cable, stacks of reels, monitors, and cassette recorders, a private digital graveyard of sound. On one screen, still powered by a generator, a looping video played silently. The Giant Eagle parking lot, the attack, and then a second feed. Mara herself entering the thrift store hours earlier. He had been recording them all along. She turned to the monitor console. A blinking text window appeared. You found the picture. Now hear the tape. Beneath it, a single audio file. Room 9 final.wav. Adler hovered behind her. You really wanna? Yes, Mara said. Play it. The speakers crackled alive. At first, only static, the kind that lives between radio frequencies. Then, faintly, voices. A woman whispering prayers, a child humming, then a man speaking. Every sound is a loop, every story a replay. The truth doesn't disappear, it just waits for someone new to hear it. Mara felt her throat tighten. That's his voice, she said, the regional supervisor. Adler frowned. It's dated the day after the attack. How? She didn't answer. She couldn't. Because on the monitor, a new feed appeared, live, her own reflection, staring back through the security camera. Only behind her, in the reflection, someone else was standing, a tall figure in a gray coat, face obscured by the flicker of the monitors. She spun around. The room was empty. By morning, the warehouse was sealed, its servers impounded. Federal agents arrived to take over, citing cyber interference and privacy violations, but Mara stayed until the last evidence bag was zipped. As dawn broke, she stepped outside to the parking lot, where her car was coated with frost. On the windshield, an envelope, like the one Mark had received. Inside was a single Polaroid. The photo showed the Giant Eagle parking lot, empty this time, no people, no cars, just the reflection in the thrift store mirror. And in that reflection stood her, only she hadn't been there. Beneath the photo, one final message. Every witness becomes the story. Mara lowered the photo slowly, eyes catching her own faint reflection in the car window. Somewhere in the distance, through the hiss of morning traffic, a supermarket PA clicked on again, and faintly, barely audible through the static, came a child's voice. Do you hear it now? If you thought this one was wild, wait for the next. Hit subscribe before the truth disappears.